Hi, this is Chris Moore. Welcome to another session of Legal Questions and Answers. A number of dog bite cases over the years. Everybody who lives anywhere, whether it's in the Bronx or whether it's in Westchester, Putnam, Dutchess, Orange, or Rockland County, or whether it's in Ohio, everybody's into dogs, and I get that because I'm seriously into dogs and have been for many years. But there are certain laws that apply to ownership of what the Agriculture and Markets Act in New York calls domesticated animals, and that includes horses and what we know commonly as farm animals, sheep and goats and things, but most relevant to this discussion is dogs. Everybody around where my office is and in the Mid-Hudson Valley has dogs, okay? Not as many people have horses, sheep, goats, other types of animals that can inflict bites or otherwise injure people. But the most common animal injuries that I have are dog bites, and it brings to mind certain issues that happen in dog bites. Just because you get bit by somebody's dog doesn't mean that you're going to contact the person, they're going to turn it over to an insurance company, and that somebody's going to call you up and settle it. Insurance companies are interested in one thing, and that's saving their shareholders money. And if they can save their shareholders money because we, on behalf of our injured clients, can't prove a history of, let's say, someone's dog, or the fact that the dog has bitten somebody before. If we can't prove those things, the law doesn't say, well, this was a nice person who got seriously injured because they were a young kid and the dog came up and bit him in the face, or did something else which results in scars that can't be fixed or worse. It's still, the obligation is on us, and what we have to do is, if we see somebody's dog running around all the time, somebody's got to be contacted, and it is the town or the village or the city that you live in, or a co-op that you live in, or a condo that you live in. They have rules and regulations, and in the case of governmental entities, they have laws like leash laws, okay? And if the leash laws are not complied with, or if somebody in a condo or a co-op has an animal that's not permitted under the rules and regulations of the condo or the co-op, or a lease between a private landlord and a tenant, then potentially the important thing for somebody in my position is that gives us somebody else to go after, because very often what we find is people don't have insurance, especially if they are renters and don't own a home, or don't own a condo, or don't own shares in a co-op, that you can go after the person who has, let's say, allowed their dog to run off a leash, had a dog that has bitten before, or have a dog that is causing so much chaos that the dog has everybody in the neighborhood worried. All right? If you see that activity going on with the dog, you really got to notify the local animal control official, and they will at least open a file on the dog and look into it. That becomes important, because if a dog bites somebody, you have to be able to prove that it was not something that just happened out of the blue. We have certain rules that apply to these types of cases, and one of the things that you have to prove is vicious propensities, prior vicious propensities. Who else has this dog ever bit? Not growled at, not look nasty or ominous towards, or not charged at and knock somebody's little kid down, and I'm very sensitive to those, but it's the bite. So the prior bite puts the dog, if some governmental entity has notice of it, into a registry through the animal control officer, through the police, through the county health department, which has to have all the dogs recorded and have a permit for a dog in many municipalities, so you can find out the history of this dog and potentially be able to go after whoever owned or sheltered the dog. And at some point, hopefully, get to some level of insurance, so that the only compensation that your client can have for this type of injury, which is monetary compensation, you can pursue that and do it successfully. So if you see dogs running around and the dog is not on a leash, it's not something that you should just say, well, it's somebody else's dog and we shouldn't do anything and it doesn't involve me, because at some point it may. And very often I have people, oh, that dog ran all over my neighborhood all the time and he growled at all the kids, or, I saw the dog jump up on people before. It doesn't help if that doesn't get recorded, because I just had to go to North Carolina with an investigator and find somebody who had witnessed a dog bite by a dog that bit my client. And that prior dog bite became the basis, because it wasn't really something that jumped out at you from some prior records, but this was the only person left that I could find. So we contacted this person, found out that this person had knowledge of this dog biting someone else before the dog bite of my client that was an extremely serious bite. And we were able to establish that this dog had these vicious propensities. The law is changing a little, because certain breeds of dogs, and we're all familiar with, and I love pit bulls and Rottweilers and bull mastiffs, but they are part of a small series or a small number of dog breeds that are now being considered to be, in some courts, not all courts, but being considered to be such inherently vicious animals, even though we all know that there are exceptions to that rule, but it's bred into certain breeds of dogs, but that there are certain breeds of dog that are so vicious that we don't need to say, well, oh, that dog bit somebody before. We got dogs, and everybody knows, somebody's got a dog that they've had for all these years, and it's always growling and snarling and always running around the property, and how can that invisible fence keep that dog on the property? Okay, but if the dog gets off the property and the dog's not on a leash, or if somebody walks onto the property of someone, a condo, co-op, somebody's private house, somebody's office, and there's no warning signs about this dog, and somebody gets injured, it's another way that we can prove, by proving the breed of the animal, at least we can argue, look, it's inherent in this breed of animal that the dog is inherently defending its property and being aggressive in doing it. It gives us a remedy for our client, assuming, of course, that there's insurance. So it really pays to keep track of these types of situations involving these animals, even though we all say it's not my dog, the dog's owner's a nice guy. It's an animal that doesn't understand necessarily the same rules and regulations and codes of conduct that we as humans do. And an animal under New York law, unfortunately in some ways, but an animal under New York law is considered to be property, much like a chair or a desk. It's not considered to be a person, all right? And so if you have a situation and you're trying to figure out the history of an animal, one of the other places you can go to is your local court. If you live in a town or a village or a city, that dog may have been subject to some type of prior prosecution, or had that dog owners served with summonses because the dog is either unleashed or a dangerous dog or something even worse. And that's what you got to do in these animal cases, and especially around here with dog cases, because otherwise you're going to find out that your client's injuries are not going to be compensated. And if somebody is bitten by a dog, they deserve compensation in most instances. And my job is to find out how to get to it. So it's the only form of relief that we have in lawsuits in New York and in most other states. And it's the only form of relief that is going to satisfy your client, compensate your client, make your client whole again, except in those certain limited instances where also the dog's prior vicious propensities, coupled with what that dog may have done to your client, causes the municipality where that dog is either living or being kept to have to take action against the dog itself and against the dog's owners. So if you have any questions, call me anytime. Phone number's at the bottom of your screen. Best of luck and have a good rest of the summer.